Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Arise with Sally Goodwin on this beautiful Thursday morning. You know how this goes, hey? The first minute or two is me making sure that I'm doing everything technologically correctly, that everything is straight and working and doing everything that it is supposed to do, that the camera's positioned correctly and the microphone's on, and this whole system of checks and balances that I go through every morning before I come on live. It's just a whole new world for me, these Facebook Lives, and I'm getting more used to it. I'm not sure that I'm getting better at it, but I'm getting more used to it. Good morning, Jen. Beautiful Jen. Lovely to see you. Yes, so good morning, everybody. All you wonderful, blessed people. Welcome to Arise with Sally Goodwin on this Thursday morning, the 13th of January 2022. It is a beautiful day here in Cape Town. Looks like it's going to be another warm one, which is lovely, unless you're menopausal and have hot flashes. Then you add to your heat, which isn't always the most comfortable thing, but the weather is beautiful, and I'm very blessed because we do have a swimming pool, so I can cool down if it gets absolutely unbearable. So, this Thursday morning, we are going to be speaking about some of the messages that God has been dropping into my spirit using verses in the Bible. And as I said to you before, I'm very careful about kind of hauling out verses just because they have a specific number attached to them, and then, you know, using that to sort of preach a word. I think that sometimes that's a little bit too, it's not that it's not a good thing, but sometimes, you know, when we take just one verse, you know, good morning, Stu, lovely to see you. When we take just one verse and kind of attach a whole lot of meaning to it, we can go off in weird and wonderful directions that God never intended us to. But, and like I always say to all of you, never just read one verse. Always read the whole paragraph or the whole chapter, preferably, to gain understanding for the context of that verse. We don't want to be using verses out of context. That has been happening for far too long in the church. And we've applied verses from the Bible in ways that just, they were never supposed to be applied. And we can't do that anymore. Goeiemôre, vriendin. Lekker om jou te sien. Yes, I am bilingual. That's probably the extent of it. Anyway, okay, so we are going to be looking in the wonderful book of Judges this morning. And the verse that God dropped into my spirit was Judges 20:22. And it's not an easy one. So be ready. Okay. So if you read the book of Judges, I just want to give you some context for this verse before we get to what I feel God is saying. So in the book of some of the most horrendous things are recorded in the book of Judges that took place in Israel. And the one of the horrendous thing is it spans kind of chapter 19 and chapter 20, Judges chapter 19, Judges chapter 20. And if you read those chapters, you will see that there was a man, he was a Levite priest, and he went traveling, and he took his concubine with him. Some verses refer to her as his concubine, and some verses refer to her as his wife. Nobody seems to be 100% sure whether he was actually married to her or whether she was his concubine. I tend to think that she was probably his concubine because I would like to think that, he would have treated his wife slightly better, but possibly not. Anyway, so off he goes traveling, and he lands up in the town of Gibeah. And he stays at somebody's house, and during the night, as seemed to happen in those days, the men of the town came to the house and demanded that the person that he was staying with bring him out so that they can have sex with him. Okay, and so it's a story very reminiscent of Lot's daughters in Sodom and Gomorrah. It's a horrible story. Anyway, basically, the man of the house says, no, but I have a virgin daughter, and this man has a concubine. Take them both instead. Just honestly, ladies, I'm just being authentic and vulnerable with you here. Some of these stories I've had to sit with the Lord and deal with my heart, where I've just been like, Lord, I'm sorry, really? Like this, these stories not only happened, but they were recorded for posterity in the Bible. And it's just, I think for women, it's just incredibly hurtful. And if you don't know that God is not patriarchal and that God's daughters are as important to him as God's sons, I can imagine that reading these stories can be extremely difficult as a woman. If you don't know God personally and you don't know his heart, and his heart for us as women and everything that he desires to see us walking in, you could really be very put off by these stories. Anyway, so the men of the town weren't interested. They wanted the Levite, etc. But so what the Levite did was he took his concubine and he shoved her out the door, basically, into the men, who was the men of the town who were standing there. He shoved her out the door. And so what they did was they basically raped and abused her all night until morning, and then they let her go. And she made her way back to the house where her master was staying, and she fell down at the door of the house and she died. And the Levite woke up in the morning and opened the door, and she was lying on the doorstep dead. So it was a terrible story, but it gets just weirdly worse. So what he did, so Gibeah was in the territory controlled by the tribe of Benjamin. Okay, so the men of Gibeah were Benjamites. So what he does then is he takes a knife and he divides his concubine's body into 12 pieces, and then he sends those pieces, one limb by limb, basically, he sends those pieces to each of the 12 tribes of Israel. So he cuts her body up into 12, and he sends each of the 12 tribes of Israel a piece of her body, and basically saying something has to be done about this. So in Judges chapter 20, all the Israelites come together, and they come before the Lord, and they basically say to the Benjamites, the tribe of Benjamin, they say that they must give up the men who did this terrible thing. So they must give up the men amongst them who did this terrible thing so that they can face punishment for what they've done. And the Benjamites refuse. They won't. Now, if you read the story, you will see that all the tribes of Israel together gathered like 400,000 men. And the Benjamites only could gather 26,000 men. However, they refused to listen to the rest of the Israelites. They refused to give over the men who had done this horrendous thing. Somehow or other, in the story in Judges, the Levite never seems to take responsibility for the fact that he actually, was also responsible for what happened to this poor woman. But that's neither here nor there right now. So what happens is the other 11 Israelite tribes gather together against the tribe of Benjamin. So they are now going to war against the tribe of Benjamin because Benjamin will not give up these men that did this terrible deed. So that's when it says in Judges 20 verse 15 that the Benjamites mustered out of their cities at that time 26,000 men who drew the sword, besides the inhabitants of Gibeah who mustered 700 chosen men. So basically there were 26,700 men. But it says among all these were 700 chosen left-handed men. Everyone could sling stones at a hair and not miss. So remember before when we've done the studies of the Hebrew calendar, and we've spoken about the Hebrew month that's associated with the tribe of Benjamin, that the tribe of Benjamin were known warriors. They were known warriors. They were extremely skilled warriors, very skilled with the bow and the arrow, skilled archers. And here they have 700 left-handed men who could sling stones at a hair and not miss. So they're clearly skilled warriors, okay? But the men of Israel, other than Benjamin, mustered 400,000 men who drew the sword. All these were men of war, okay? And then the Israelites arose and went up to the house of God at Bethel and asked counsel of God. I want you to pay attention. The Israelites arose and went up to the house of God and asked counsel of God and said, which of us shall take the lead to battle against the Benjamites? And the Lord said, Judah shall go up first. Then the Israelites rose in the morning and encamped against Gibeah, and the men of Israel went out to battle against Benjamin. And the Benjamites came, and they fell that day 22,000 men of Israel. So basically 400,000 men of Israel gathered from all the 11 Israelite tribes went out against 26,700 men of Benjamin. And basically, they went before the Lord. They asked the Lord which tribe should go up first. God told them to send Judah up first. Judah went up first. Judah is praise, remember? So that is part of Judah's calling, is actually praise. And they were lost. The Benjamites killed 22,000 of those 400,000 men that gathered against them. Basically, the 11 tribes of Israel lost. Now we come to the verse I want us to pay attention to. Now you have the context. You understand where we are here, right? Judges chapter 20, verse 22 says, but the people, the men of Israel, took courage and strengthened themselves and again set their battle line in the same place where they formed it the first day. But the people, the men of Israel, took courage and strengthened themselves and again set their battle line in the same place where they formed it the first day. Okay, I want you to pay attention to that verse. Okay, in the New King James Version, it says, and the people, that is, the men of Israel, encouraged themselves and again formed the battle line at the place where they had put themselves in array on the first day. That's encouraged themselves. In the New King James Version, it's underlined, and the Hebrew word for that word, encourage themselves, is the same word used in the book of Joshua, when in Joshua chapter 1, where God says to Joshua, be strong and courageous. Be strong and very courageous. It's the same Hebrew root word. Okay, so be strong and courageous. The Israelites encouraged themselves and they went back up. Okay. And they went up and wept before the Lord, it continues, and says to the Lord, shall we go into battle again against our brethren, the Benjamites? And God said, go up against them. So they went up against them again on the second day. And the tribe of Benjamin, it says in chapter 25, verse 25, the tribe of Benjamin fell to the ground, the Israelites again, 18,000 men, all of whom were swordsmen. So the first day, the Benjamites killed 22,000 men. The second day, the Benjamites killed 18,000 men. And then the Israelites, in verse 26, went up and came to the house of God, Bethel, and wept. And they sat there before the Lord and fasted that day until evening and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord. And then they inquired of the Lord again, and they said, and in verse 28, shall we yet again go out to battle against our brethren the Benjamites, or shall we quit? And the Lord said, go up, for tomorrow I will deliver them into your hand. And the third day, the Israelites go up against the tribe of Benjamin, and it's basically a wholesale slaughter. They change their battle formation, they do things slightly differently, and they win. They practically decimate the whole entire tribe of Benjamin. I think it says somewhere there were like 600 men. Yeah, there were 600 men. 600 men of the tribe of Benjamin left. Okay, so now we know. So we look at this, okay? Good morning, Jenny. Lovely to see you. So we look at all of this and we say, okay, this is a horrible story. It really is a tragic, shocking story. It is something that we don't really like to think about. It happened years and years and years and years and years ago, and it happened directly to the Israelites. Okay, but what can we learn from this? That is the question. What can we learn from this? And what I believe God is saying to us for 2022 and probably going into 2023 is that thing of go up again. Go up again. Don't, in other words, persist. You know, in my prophetic word for 2022 and in a teaching I did the other day, I was speaking about focus and intimacy. Focusing on Jesus, intimacy with Jesus, how it's a chicken and egg situation. If you have the one, you have the other. Intimacy brings focus and focus brings intimacy. But both of those things only happen with persistence. We can't be intimate with God one day and then not give him another thought for 3 months. It is persistent focus, persistent intimacy, persistent faith that gets us to that point. And I'm sure that there are many other verses in the Bible that I could have used to demonstrate this persistent focus, persistent intimacy, persistent faith. But this story is so shocking that I think it forces you to sit back and say to the Lord, what was going on there? What was happening? And so I think there are various things that we can learn from this story that we need to apply to our year and to this year and to the rest of this decade. Okay, so firstly, we notice that when Israel goes to God the first time, so remember now, every time over the 3 days they went before the Lord first, okay? So they didn't go into this battle without seeking God. They sought the Lord every time. But it's how they sought him. So look at the very first time in verse 18, when they went to ask counsel of God. What did they say? They said, which of us shall take the lead in battle against the Benjamites? Notice they didn't say, should we go to war? Only the third time did they say to ask the Lord, should we go to war against our brethren the Benjamites, or should we quit? The first time they went up, they just said to the Lord, which one of us should go up first? And God said, send Judah. So notice, God didn't say they're not supposed to go into war, and he answered them. And they went up, and they lost. The second time they went before the Lord, they asked the question correctly. They said, in verse 23, shall we go up again to battle against our brethren in the Benjamites? And God said to them, go up against them. So the second time, when the verse that we're paying attention to, verse 22, when it says, but the people, the men of Israel, took courage and strengthened themselves and again set their battle line in the same place where they formed it the first day. So they were being strong and courageous the way God had commanded them to be. They set their battle line, the same place that they had formed it the same day. They went before the Lord and they said to the Lord, shall we go up again in battle against the Benjamites? So now they ask the right question. Should we go to war? And what does God say to them? Go up against them. He doesn't say no. He says, yes, go. And they are again defeated, roundly defeated, 18,000 men. 18,000 men killed. But notice that when they go up to God the third time, they inquire of the Lord, because the Ark of the Covenant was there. And they say, shall we yet go again to battle against our brethren the Benjamites, or shall we quit? And God says to them, go up, for tomorrow I will deliver them into your hands. And then if you read a little bit further on, you'll see that they change their battle plan. So you notice the first 2 times they put their battle lines in exactly the same place. They did the same thing twice in a row. By the third time, they changed their battle plan. They looked at things differently. They decided to do things not the way they've always done them, but slightly differently. They basically surrounded the Benjamites so that they couldn't escape effectively. And after that battle, only 600 Benjamites were left. I want you to get what I'm trying to say here. There are times when we have a word from the Lord, a prophetic word from God, a word we know is from God. So that is the first thing. The word that you are standing in focus and intimacy and persistence and faith for, is it from God? Is it God that has told you that? That is your first question to ask. So the Israelites, their first question should have been, are we supposed to go to war against Benjamin? But they didn't. They assumed that they were supposed to go to war against Benjamin. They asked, who should go first? So firstly, be sure that your word is from God. Okay. Secondly, even if your word is from God, even if he has spoken it directly over you, it doesn't mean it's going to be easy. And it doesn't mean that it's going to happen the very first time we expect it to happen. I have spoken to so many people recently, so many wonderful, incredible, amazing people who have got prophetic words from the Lord, prophecies over their lives that they have been waiting years for, and they have not come to pass yet. But what has happened is they are disillusioned. They are disappointed. They are despondent. But because God says yes to something, so just look at the story of the Israelites. What happens? God says, yes, go. What happens when we get a prophetic word from the Lord? So firstly, again, and I know I say this over and over, but I want you to hear this and understand it. You need to make sure it's from the Lord. It doesn't matter who prophesies over you. They can be the most incredible prophets on the earth. Every prophet, every person gifted prophetically can make a mistake when they prophesy, if they prophesy from what they sense is a yearning and a desire in your heart and soul. And it happens more often than we would like to admit that we prophesy back to someone their deepest desire. So that is why if you're going to prophesy over someone, you need to be saying to the Lord, is this you? And as the person being prophesied over, you need to be saying to the Lord, is this you? So once you're sure that your word is from God, he's confirmed his word, he's ready, he's waiting to perform his word, as we learned in Jeremiah. Then you stand in faith for it. But sometimes it doesn't work out the way we think it's going to, because we have a picture in our mind of what it should look like. So somebody gives you a prophetic word. It's an incredible word. It's confirmation of everything God has ever told you. And the first thing we do as humans is we box it into the box that fits. Firstly, what we often do is we assume it's a word for now. So we try and squeeze it into our current circumstances. One of the most important things about words from God and prophecies is timing. And it must be God's timing, not our timing. So when God gives you a word, the first thing you seek him on, once you're sure that it's him, etc., is what is the timing of this word, Lord? Is this now? Is this in 2 years' time? Is this in 10 years' time? Is this something I'm laying the foundation for that will only come to fruition after my lifetime? Timing is imperative to get the right timing of God's words. So And then sometimes God takes us through a process so that we ask the right questions, so that we learn to do things differently. So the very first time we apply the word to our lives, it doesn't work out. And then when it doesn't work out, we need to be saying to the Lord, what are you trying to teach me? What are you trying to tell me? What am I needing to learn through this? Do I need to take away the frame that I've placed around this word? Do I need to double check your timing with you? Do I need to ask a different question? Sometimes we just don't ask the right questions. And God, he's not playing a game here. You know what I mean? He's not teasing you or giving you ridiculous riddles that are impossible to. He's not playing some kind of game with you. It's relationship. It's relationship. And if everything just, if you got a word from the Lord and then it just happened, there would be no need for you to have faith. There would be no need for you to focus on Jesus. There would be no need for intimacy, because it would all just pan out. It's like when you have children and you give them everything and life is never hard and they never struggle and they never have to do anything for themselves. They grow up to be selfish, self-centered, fairly useless human beings who don't have a lot to offer the world. And you all know, I have 3 boys. Gorgeous, the most divine men in the universe. 20, 23, and 26. Gorgeous boys. And at some point in their lives, generally around the late teens, somewhere around there, I had to sit each one of them down and say to them, the world does not revolve around you. I need you to understand that. Because I love you desperately and would literally lay my life down for you, but the world is not going to do that. So, pull yourself together and understand that life is hard and often unfair, and you need to get out there and make something of it. And it's the same with God. He's not exactly like that, but he's like, this is about relationship. This is about developing character. This is about us learning that giftings and callings and anointings are amazing, incredible gifts from God, wonderful. But they are nothing without character. An eagle cannot fly on only one wing. And if one wing is really well developed and the other wing is just a little stump, it's going to be a very uneven, very uncomfortable, short flight, probably. God needs us to be able to soar like eagles on wings that are fully developed. The wing of gifting, anointing, calling, and the wing of character. Focus, intimacy with Jesus. And sometimes what happens is that we ask the wrong question and then we ask the right question, but it still doesn't work because we have to change our battle plan. So we do something the way we've always done it. So we get a prophetic word from the Lord and we steward it a certain way and it comes to pass. So the next time we get a prophetic word from the Lord, we steward it the same way and nothing happens. And then the next time we get a word, we steward it the same way, still nothing. Because God is saying to you, change your battle plan. That one worked then. It's not going to work now. This is a different situation. It's a different circumstance. You need to look at it differently and you need to change your battle plan. Sometimes, by the 3rd time that the Israelites went up, they'd fasted. They'd wept before the Lord. They expected an easy victory because God didn't say, no, this isn't your battle. But God needed them to learn from him. They needed to learn to ask the right questions. They needed to learn to not box God in. They needed to learn to change their battle plans when necessary. And then, on the third day, God says to them, go up and I will deliver them into your hands. And he does so. But it was a very expensive lesson. A very expensive lesson. 40,000 men died. So this is where we are at the moment in time. Judges chapter 20, verse 22. But the people, the men of Israel, took courage and strengthened themselves and again set their battle line in the same place where they formed it the first day. If you have got a word from the Lord that you know is Jesus, that you know is straight from the throne room of heaven, how many times are you prepared to go up again before you get victory? How many times are you prepared to approach the Lord and say, am I asking the wrong questions? Do I need to change my battle plan? Is there something I'm missing here, that this is not working the way I thought it should work? Am I expecting it to work this way because it's always worked this way before? And where we are at the moment, we have not yet reached the third day where God says, go up again. Go up, and this time I will deliver them to you. We haven't reached the third day yet. And this, I'm not saying this over you individually, necessarily. As individuals, you need to be seeking God for yourself and asking him where you are in the 3-day cycle. The first day where you just expect he's going to do it for you. The second day where you ask the right question, but you still do things the same way. Or the third day where you've asked the right question, changed your battle plans, and you know you're heading for victory. We all know that victory is eventually ours. We all know that. You read the book of Revelation, we win in the end. But it's not the end yet. And there are many, 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 many battles and skirmishes that have to be fought between now and the end that we could win or lose if we're not doing it with God, hand in hand, with our ear right next to his mouth so that we can hear exactly what he's saying. But as a global body of believers, and in light of what I was saying on Tuesday when we looked at Jeremiah 1, we're in the second day still. We've asked the right question, but we still have a lot to learn. We need to change our battle plan. Things need to be done differently in the church. The church needs to look completely different to actually have any impact on the world. The battle plans need to be changed. We cannot do things the way we have always done things. We cannot be that whole, if it's not broken, don't fix it if it's not broken or whatever. It's broken, very broken. And we need to be asking the Lord for new battle plans. So it is this year, particularly 2022, is a year to be strong and courageous. Do not give up. Do not quit. Just go before the Lord and say, what other questions do I need to ask? What way do I need to change the way I've stewarded this thus far? Probably the first most important question would be, is this word from you, Lord? Is this you? Is this what you wanted for me? And when you're sure of that, then you can start the process of asking the right questions. We are so impatient. You know, we live in a society of instant gratification. If somebody texts you and you don't respond immediately, why don't you have your phone with you? We want microwave Christianity. We've become consumer Christians. That all we do is consume and consume and consume. But we're not doing anything with what we're consuming. We are not physically, practically walking in the things that God has called us to walk in. I was saying earlier how the story in Judges, draws huge similarities to the story of Lot's daughters in Sodom and Gomorrah. And you know that when Sodom and Gomorrah is referenced in Ezekiel, God doesn't say anything about the sexual immorality and the terrible things that they did. What he says is that they didn't care for the poor. They didn't look after the widow. In Ezekiel, he says that's why they were judged. Because they didn't care for the poor and look after the widows and the children. Not actually so much the sexual immorality part, which is the part that we're all, about. I'm not saying sexual immorality is a good thing. Okay, hear me on this. Don't hear things that I'm not saying. I'm just saying that we have to, the body of Christ has to move from being consumer Christians, to Christians who just constantly get fed, to Christians who actually, believers who actually practically walk out the things that Jesus spoke about. That's where we need to be as a church. And that's why I feel as though as a church, as a body of believers globally, we are in the second day of that particular. We are seeking the Lord more because we can tell it hasn't worked. We're like, okay, Lord, let's ask the right question because this hasn't worked up until now. But we're still very resistant to changing our battle plan. Very resistant to believing that things could be done differently or should be done differently. We're very resistant to that. We still want to do things the same way that we've done them for 2,000 years. And when God pours out his new wine, he needs new wineskins. That same old battle plan, that same old system, that same old structure, that same old organization is not going to cut it. It's not going to be able to contain the new wine. So, we need to be praying for the church globally, praying for people to ask the right questions, for people to be prepared to change the way of doing things, so that we can impact the world the way we need to in the times ahead. There's some hard questions that need to be asked amongst bodies of believers at the moment. Some hard questions, but they need to be asked and answered by God. We need to weep before him. We need to fast and pray. We need to stand before the mercy seat, which was the Ark of Covenant had a mercy seat. We need to stand before his mercy seat and ask him to show us the way. We need to stop assuming that we know what he wants us to do and actually wait for an answer. We need to have persistent focus, persistent intimacy, persistent faith, so that we can be those who go up again, so that we are not those who quit, but we are those who go up again and again and again until God gives us victory. So, Judges 20, verse 22, be strong and courageous. So, before I go, as an activation, because God is, It's an activation because listening to my teachings is amazing, and I love and appreciate every single one of you who takes the time to come on at 7 in the morning on a Tuesday and a Thursday and listen to me speak. And all the people who share, thank you so much. Like and share and all the things and send me messages. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But none of that means anything if the words that God has given me do not impact you enough to actually do something with them. We need to be activated. We need to be activated so that this decade, this important, significant decade, we can step into everything God has for us because we need to be activated. Isana says 2 Chronicles 20:22 lines up. Thank you, my friend. Thank you. So the activation, I would suggest an activation. Okay. Sometimes I call it homework, but I think that nobody likes the word homework. And it is this. Go before the Lord. Ask him. Those words that you know have been spoken over your life, that you know are from him, that you're still waiting to see come to pass, sit with him and say to him, am I asking the right questions? Do I need to change the way I do things? You'll be amazed at how clearly and directly he will answer you when you ask the right question. When you come from a space of having a pure heart, clean hands and a pure heart. When your heart is just for Jesus and that's all that matters. So I will only see you next week, Tuesday. Tuesday, next week, Tuesday, I will be back. And I really am trusting and hoping that some of you will take the time to sit with God and ask him some questions. And I decree and declare over each one of you courage and boldness, that you will be strong and courageous in the face of whatever it is that you have to face, that you will have boldness like a lion, boldness like the Lion of Judah, that will rise up inside you, and you will be strong and courageous and bold. I speak boldness over you. I speak courage over you. And I speak victory over you. The victory of the third day. So sending so much love to each and every one of you. Thank you so much for watching me this morning. I so appreciate each and every one of you. And I shall see you on Tuesday morning at 7 a.m. Love you all. Bless you all. Mwah. See you on Tuesday.